everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to HED Talks. People seemed to like my roses last week, so I kept them. I'm rethinking the pink title, though, now that I see it up there. Might have to change that. This is actually our last week in Great Women of History. So I'll let you know what we're doing next week at the end. But so let's get started. We've been doing Great Women in History. Does anybody remember everyone we've done?
Yes.
We're missing one. Excellent. Yes. These are all the great women that we have discussed. Yes, you got them. You got them all. And then there's no better way to finalize this particular series than with the great woman that we're going to be talking about today. You know who that is, correct? Oh, yes, Eleanor Roosevelt. Well, I have to tell you that I have been inundated with information. There's so much information about her. She did so many amazing things that I'm going to have to just consolidate today. All right, so let's get started. Are you ready?
Yes.
We're going to get started. I have to tell you, we all know about the great things that she did. I believe that that's really common knowledge. I wanted to share with you, though, a little bit about her personal life, her growing up, the private things. It helps us to really appreciate her even more when we understand the difficulties that she went through growing up as a child. She was born October 11th, 1884 in Manhattan. All right, and that places her right smack dab in the Gilded Age. All right, you've all heard of the Gilded Age. What was going on? What was that?
People were making a lot of money.
Oh, yes. Yeah, some people, the top, the elite, right? Like the Astors. Have you heard of the Astors? Oh, yeah, and Mrs. Astor, she was the orchestrator. I mean, she called all the shots, didn't she? Yes, you were nobody until she said that you were. And this was how it was in high society. And this is the environment, the atmosphere, the status that Eleanor was born into. Did you realize that?
Yeah, I knew that.
Wealthy, very wealthy.
Yeah.
These are her parents, Elliot Roosevelt and Anna Hall. All right, now we might know that name Roosevelt pretty well, right?
Yes.
Yes. So Elliot, her father, he has a great claim to fame because he is the younger brother of who?
Teddy.
Exactly, yes. He is the younger brother of Teddy Roosevelt. Now, her mother, Anna, she comes from the Hall family. This is a photograph of her. She is a renowned beauty. She and her sisters, within this family, she and her sisters are well known throughout high society as beauties. They're beautiful women. Now, if you're a society woman, you're wealthy, then what is your role in life? What is your role and your purpose?
Marry well and have children.
Very well.
To look beautiful.
Excellent. Yes, you are all correct. The whole sum total of your responsibility is to marry well and look beautiful and raise some children. But do you really have to raise your children?
No.
You don't even, I guess maybe we could say have some children. All right, have some children. So when Anna, she fulfills her role, she does it very well. Marrying Elliot Roosevelt was a good snag, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then right away they have a child. Their first child is a daughter, and that daughter is Eleanor Roosevelt. Now look at this little girl. Look at her. Do you know that her mother was so disappointed in her looks that yeah, her mother and her aunts called her the ugly duckling. Was very disappointed in what she looked like, criticized physical features that she had no control over. All right, that she had absolutely no control over. And then also her mother called her Granny. She's a little girl, and her mother was calling her Granny because she was a serious little girl. Now, if you're a debutante, if you're a socialite, do you need to be serious, intelligent, and no. What do you need to be? You need to be delightful. And so she was thinking that her little girl is not attractive and doesn't have an upbeat, peppy personality. So her mother was admonishing her to make sure that she had good manners because that was the only hope. Now, clearly, when you look at these photographs, look at her. There is nothing, I just don't even understand that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her. She's absolutely adorable, I think. So that's how she's raised. These are her early years when her mother and her aunts are putting her down and she's feeling like she doesn't really have a future. I saw an interview. I'll share this with you. I didn't put it in there because there's so much. I couldn't fit it all into 1 hour. But she's doing an interview. She's older, and this is with McCall's magazine. Remember McCall's?
Yes.
And she just says, she's an older woman. She says very calmly and matter-of-factly, she said, my mother and my aunts were beautiful women. Imagine the shock when I was so ugly. She just said that in the interview. She just matter-of-factly, she sympathized. They had done such a job on her that she sympathized and said, imagine the shock when I turned out so ugly. So she was called the ugly duckling. All right, but she had a saving grace, and the saving grace was her father, Elliot. He adored her. She adored him. The only problem with that, though, is that he was not present too often in her life on a day-to-day basis. He was always traveling. He was away. He wasn't there very often. And he has another problem. He is a severe alcoholic. In fact, there are instances where he is in an asylum, what would be called, it was hospitalized. He was hospitalized. Now the family said it was for alcoholism, but that's, So there could have been more to that. But he was actually in treatment a few times, so he's away. He's not there enough. But when he is there, he really does lavish love and acceptance on her. It's just not happening often enough for her. There's 2 more children. She has 2 brothers. This is Elliot Jr., okay? And his name is Hall, H-A-L-L. All right, his name is Hall. That's the mother's maiden name. That's right, Dennis. Yep, so that's the mother's maiden name, the family name. All right, so the 3 children, they love their father, but he's just simply not around very often. Here's more photos. Again, these are the boys. Let me preempt you before anyone gets upset. All right, these are the boys. Elliot Jr. and Hall. This is Eleanor and this is Eleanor. Can anybody look at that photo and conceivably call her an ugly duckling?
No. She looks just like her father.
She does. I mean, it's just unconscionable that happened to her. But if only that were the only bad thing that happened to her, it's not.
No.
When she was 8 years old, her mother dies of diphtheria. Her mother died of diphtheria. Now again, remember, Elliot, her dad, he is constantly away. All right, so now the mother has died. She's got an absent father. 1 year after her mother died, her brother, Elliot Jr., passes away from the same thing. From the same thing, diphtheria. Now, a year after that, Elliot attempts suicide.
Oh my.
He jumps out of a window, and he survives the attempt, but 2 days later, he has a severe seizure, and he dies. He dies. At the age of 10, Eleanor is an orphan. She's an orphan, and she's the only family member that she has is her little baby brother Hall. Okay, so now she's an orphan, and the only immediate family member that she has left is her little brother Hall. And so what they have to do, she and her brother, is go to live with her maternal grandmother.
Who was a pain in the neck.
Who is, well, she's from the family that thinks she's an ugly duckling, right?
No.
All right, the grandmother is from the Hall side. She goes to live with the Hall side of the family, and even though they've taken her in, there are no other children. She doesn't have any playmates. It's full. The house is full of the siblings, her aunts and uncles. All right, the aunts who are beautiful socialites. There's just constant drama with them because, you know, there's nothing else to fill their life. They're just supposed to be beautiful, and so there's just constant drama with whatever boyfriend issue is happening at the time. And the uncles are outrageous drunks. If you're wealthy, you don't have to work, so what are you going to do? You drink.
Good God.
Drink and carouse. Yep. All right. So she is going with her little brother to this home full of adults, no other children other than the two of them, and she describes that life. Hold on. I'll get this for you.
Well, I was not a very happy little girl. I was a low, great deal this little girl.
The age of 9, both of Eleanor's parents were dead. She would grow up living with her maternal grandmother, Mary Hall, between Grandmother Hall's house on East 37th Street in Manhattan and their summer estate near Tivoli, New York, called Oak Terrace.
I was brought up in a rather peculiar way. I was brought up, first of all, by my grandmother, who thought really of life only from a social point of view.
Yes.
But she had a tremendous sense of obligation about your social life. And so there was certain discipline about that. You didn't say that you felt ill or that you felt tired because it made you unpleasant to the people you were with. And if you were unhappy or anything, you didn't tell anybody, you bore it alone.
Little Eleanor endured a lot growing up. She wrote that she was always fearful of something, whether it was failure or displeasing someone. There was constant drama with her aunts and their romance problems. Her uncles, Valentine G. Hall III and Edward, were champion tennis players. Uncle Valley even wrote a book about the sport, but sadly, they became alcoholics. Visits to the bar in Tivoli often resulted in being loaded onto the back of the carriage and the horse bringing them home. Rules were strict about winter and summer clothes. Grandmother Hall insisted her wearing winter clothes from November 1st to April 1st, regardless of weather. Eleanor tried to make the best of life under conditions of turmoil. Reading was one escape.
I lived in books very largely, and I can remember reading books and crying over them.
Misunderstood, Florence Montgomery's story about an orphan was her favorite. Although her choice of books was not censored, if she asked certain questions, the book disappeared. She loved walking or horseback riding on the grounds of the estate. Rolling down the river to Tivoli to pick up the mail was a favorite activity. Sundays, she traveled with her family to St. Paul's Church. In the evening, the family gathered around the piano in the parlor, singing hymns, a memory that Eleanor would always cherish.
This is Oak Terrace. It was built in 1872 by Eleanor Roosevelt's grandparents, Valentine G. Hall Jr. and Mary Livingston Ludlow Hall. They built it as a summer place and would bring their children here every year. Eventually, Eleanor Roosevelt, as a little girl, would spend her summers here too. So let's go in and check it out.
Inside this 14-room house, to the immediate left, is a parlor or reception room, and just beyond is the dining room with its striking fireplace.
I'm going to move along because it really just shows you, it's being renovated, so it just shows you empty rooms, so there really isn't very much to see. But you can tell that the home that you grew up in just had adult drama, right? That was it. It had adult drama. And from this experience, she and Hall really, they clung to one another, and that relationship lasted for the rest of their lives. But what about the Roosevelt side? She has a whole other side of the family, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they were, they loved Eliot's children, Eleanor and Hall, and Teddy Roosevelt did go to visit them, but of course, he was kind of busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was sort of a busy guy,
Yeah.
and so he went when he could. She adored him. She was his favorite of his nieces and nephews. He thought Eleanor was just wonderful. He was very impressed with her. So they were close, but she didn't get to see them very often. She got to, maybe once a year or something, go to a Roosevelt family reunion and see some of her relatives. Now, as this kind of unsavory environment is going on in the home, Eleanor's grandmother decides when she's 15 years old that she needs to get her granddaughter out of the situation. She needs to send her out of this situation. It's not good for her. And so she sends her to London. She sends her to London to a finishing school. And here is the finishing school. Allenswood is the name of the school that she went to, and it's a boarding school, so she's going to live there. And she stays there for the next 3 years. And here is where life takes a complete and drastic turn for her. A wonderful turn for her. So here she is. She's at Allenswood, and she's making friends. Did she have any friends prior to this? No, she's a 15-year-old girl, and she's not had developed friends. She's just had this kind of very sad, depressing, unhappy childhood to this point. But here she is making all kinds of friends. She's discovering that she's got leadership skills, and so she can participate in clubs and activities, and that's what she's doing. And then the other girls there with her are really looking to her as a leader and someone that they can confide in and somebody that they can get advice from. And what about Eleanor? Who does she get advice from? Who's her mentor? Well, the woman running the school, This woman right here, she sees Eleanor Roosevelt, and she sees in her, she's completely blinded to what she looks like. She sees inside of her, and that's what she's bringing out. That's what she's encouraging her to follow, pursue, develop, and build up, is her inner strength, is her intelligence, is her free thinking. And that's what she's encouraging Eleanor to do. And so Marie is teaching at this school, not just Eleanor, but all of the students, free thinking, independent thought, and social consciousness. Is that something that socialites typically did?
No.
What did they really want to do with the lower class? Everything to separate themselves, right? Everything possible to separate themselves from the lower class. But here in London at Allenswood, she is learning something completely different. Remember, you heard in her own words, her grandmother was focused on the social norms, propriety, right? But here she comes to this school, and here's a woman encouraging her to think for herself. Think for herself. Have some social awareness. Be aware of the tragedies and the misfortune of others. And she thrives, as you can imagine. She thrives. This is exactly what she needed. Do you know that Eleanor Roosevelt had a photograph of her mentor, and she kept that at her bedside for her entire life? This woman had inspired her. But think about it for just a minute. If you'd grown up the way she grew up, and you're 15, and that's the first time anyone's believed in you and thought you had any value. So she was really, really deeply impacted by this experience. So she's there for 3 years. She should have another year, but her grandmother calls her back. She's having a wonderful time, and her grandmother calls her back, and this is an absolute blow to her. She does not want to come back, especially for the reason why she's being called back. Do you see my background is a swan? Are you picking up on my metaphor? The reason why her grandmother calls her back is because she is now 17 years old, and when you're 17, what are you supposed to do in New York society? Come out, exactly, yes. So she is a debutante, and she has to come out. Now, what does that mean? What's that all about? Yeah, I am now eligible for marriage. All right? Think about this barbaric system. Think about it. So we're parading 17-year-old women. All right, I have a clip, because I was so sure you'd want to see this.
And a big factor in the world's estimation of British might.
The London season is getting underway, a fact that's important to the debutante, if not to you. So here's the exclusive picture of the exclusive debutante's ball at Grosvenor House. The debs in their stately ranks step slowly through the ballroom and separate to make an aisle for the enormous cake. The enormous cake is wheeled up to the top table, and there it is cut by the Duchess of Gloucester. Follows the impressive moment when all the debutantes curtsy as one. Then there's a scramble, and maidenly refinement degenerates into ungainly competition. Backwards they retire through the hall, and Queen Charlotte's Hospital benefits by the proceeds of a very graceful occasion. And with the arrival of the great day, the lucky recipients of the royal...
I mean, really.
But that was London.
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't even the same year. I'm just giving you a little flavor
Okay.
of what it was.
But at least they didn't have to be, in the US, in New York, they didn't have to be presented to the king or queen.
That's true, yes. In New York, you didn't have to
You
be
were
presented to
society as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. So you wear your finest and you're paraded, or oh my gosh.
Kind of like cattle.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's blowing my 21st century mind. All right, so now there weren't all the debutantes in this mindset that this is a great, wonderful, thrilling, exciting thing. There were some of these young socialites that did have a social conscience. This is one of them. This woman, Mary Harriman, she's from a wealthy family. She's a debutante, and she founds the New York Junior League. Have you ever heard of the New York Junior League?
Just the old society.
That was society too.
The New York Junior League was this woman and about 80 wealthy young ladies who went into the low-class areas of New York and did whatever they could to help, to find out what was going on. So they were a force. There were 80 of them. That's a lot, all right? And the mindset of the time, to think that a young woman, a socialite, would go into a poor part of the neighborhood, that was unthinkable. And I'm sure their parents probably melted. They probably just, corroded and I'm sure they just crumbled to pieces. But this is a force of 80 young women, and guess who joins that number? Eleanor Roosevelt, because when she goes home and she's supposed to be attending these debutante balls, she thinks that it is the most ridiculous thing. She thinks it's a waste of a life. This whole socialite business is a waste of a life, and she wants no part of it at all. And so she joins the Junior League, and that's what they do. They go into the poor parts of the city, and they do what they can. They offer some relief wherever they're able. But she does still attend some of the socialite events, because you have to do that. And one of the things that was well attended was horse shows at Madison Garden, right? Yeah, you had to go to the horse shows. That was something that the wealthy did. And so she was at one, and she bumped into a childhood relative there. Any guesses? Yes. Franklin Roosevelt. They bumped into each other. Of course, they've known each other sporadically throughout the years. They had met. They're cousins. They're in the same family. But when they met this time, things were a little different. They'd each grown some and noticed that. And so they were spending a lot of time together. Now, this isn't about Franklin. We could do a whole other thing about Franklin. But let's just focus a little bit on his family. He's an only child, right? He's an only child. His father is James. His mother is Sarah. His father, James, had passed away right before he met Eleanor. And so Sarah, well, I was going to say she focused all her attention on Franklin then, but literally that's really how his whole life was. She was laser focused on her son. So when he is expressing interest in Eleanor, what do you think Sarah's reaction to that is? She doesn't really like that. No, she's not too happy about that. So just so I just want to make clear one thing, because I did some digging on this. All right, I just want you all to rest assured. All right, they are cousins, but they are fifth cousins once removed. Okay, they're fifth cousins once removed. And if you want to really look into it, because I don't have the time to do that with you here right now. But I would like to refer you to this site. It's called Useful Charts. I use it constantly. It's brilliant. I love it. I highly recommend it. Okay, so Useful Charts, you could get the Roosevelt family tree and you could find out exactly, how that, fifth cousins once removed thing happens. All right, so now Franklin has proposed to Eleanor. She has accepted. He's very happy and he wants to go tell his mother about this wonderful news. And what does she say? So she says, do this one thing for me. Do this. She's very manipulative, and she's got him wrapped around for you. I want you to put off announcing the engagement for 1 year. 1 year. And if after a year you both still feel the same way, we'll deal with it then. She needed a year to come up with another plan. So anyways, they do that. They respect her wishes, but he tells her right up front, it's not going to change anything. And she does put up a little bit of fight, but ultimately we know what happens, right? So they get married. Look, I found a colorized photo of her in her wedding dress. Isn't that?
It's very elaborate.
Oh, it really truly is. Oh my goodness. Yes, it really is. So they do. So they get married in 1905 on a special day. Do you know what day it was? It was St. Patrick's Day. It was St. Patrick's Day. Now, the reason why they got married on St. Patrick's Day in 1905 wasn't anything to do with being Irish. It had everything to do with the fact that Uncle Teddy was going to be in town for the St. Patrick's Day parade. He's going to be there anyway. And of course, she doesn't have anyone to walk her down the aisle, right? So they scheduled their wedding so that Uncle Teddy could walk her down the aisle, and he was going to be there on St. Patrick's Day for the parade in 1905. On March 17th. So that is the whole reason why they had their wedding that day. Then they go off on their honeymoon, and Sarah, you remember Mom Sarah, while they're away, she did the most thoughtful thing. Yeah, she did the most loveliest thing for them. She purchased a townhouse in the city right next door to her. All right, so they have their own townhouse. Now, on every floor, there is entry. There's entry on every floor. So she could just go see them whenever she wanted. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. Now, Eleanor says, or she wrote this later on. She said she just hated this, and she never felt like this was her home. She never felt like she lived in her own home. All right, so there is tension. There's tension between her mother-in-law and her, and I found a couple of photos that really illustrate. Now look at, what do these photos tell you? So here's Sarah, Franklin, and Eleanor. Does anybody look happy? No. And who's in the middle? He's in the middle. He loves his mother. He's been his whole life devoted to his mother. He loves his wife, but so he's just he feels like he's in the middle, and it's causing a great strain. Do you think Sarah's happy with the way she's raising the children? No, she is not happy about that at all. She's doing it all wrong. In fact, Eleanor does everything all wrong. And it's a very good thing Sarah is right there to help out, because oh my, if she weren't there, right? Here's another one. What does this say? Yeah, she's just got herself right in between them, doesn't she? Yeah, she's got herself right in between them. But somehow, despite this, they go on and they have quite a family, don't they? Yes, they have 5 kids. Actually, I will tell you, they had 6 children. I don't know if you're aware of this. They had 6 children, and one of their sons died. He was just a couple of months old, and the death of their son did cause Sarah to ease up on Eleanor a little bit. So things improved after the death of the baby, a little bit. But sad that it would take that, right? Sad that it would take something like that. All right, so they've got 5 surviving children. So we have Anna, we have James, we have Elliot, and Franklin Jr. and John. All right, those are the children. Okay, and it was shortly after the little guy was born that Eleanor finds out some devastating news. Finds out that Franklin, he's been having an affair with this woman. Now, the betrayal is deeper than just that. You know why? She is the secretary of Eleanor. She is Eleanor's social secretary. So the betrayal isn't just from her husband, but also from this woman who she spends every day with. That's who betrayed her. That's who betrayed her. And she's absolutely devastated by this. And she's feeling like this is maybe a time for me to break away. She just doesn't want to. Is this marriage going really well?
No.
It's got some heavy-duty strains to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, but Sarah steps in, all right, and she's so upset about her son doing this that she said, if you divorce Eleanor, I will disinherit you. I will disinherit you. You will not bring shame on the family. You will not divorce your wife. And then his political advisors are also saying what? Yeah, because now he's running for the Senate, right?
Yeah.
He's got a political career is gearing up. And so this would ruin his chances of going any further. And so what happens is Eleanor and Franklin, they find a peace. They find a peace because they truly do respect and admire one another. They respect and admire one another. And actually, when this happens, Eleanor seems to find some kind of unexpected freedom because she tried to be a wife, she tried to be a daughter-in-law, she tried to be a mother, and what did all that bring her?
Nothing.
Heaps and heaps and heaps of criticism and being let down because is her husband cleaving to his wife as man is supposed to do? No, he's just trying to go back and forth and play mediator between his mother, and so he's not really standing up for her, is he? No. So when this happens, it hurts her deeply, and I don't want to minimize that at all, but it kind of gave her a little bit of freedom because now she's saying to herself, I'm done trying. I am done trying. And now what I want to do is I want to pursue the things that created great fire and passion in me when I was at school, when I had the happiest time of my life. I want to go back to that. I want to feel that. And so that brings her to a return to social consciousness. And so she is going back into the places that need her the most. Going into poverty, going into the workplace. What else is happening around now?
The women wanting to vote.
She becomes a suffragette.
Yeah.
She becomes a suffragette and she is going to be a champion for causes for women. And then as she starts to gear up again in this kind of social movement, what happens to her husband?
Well, he gets
Polio.
Exactly. Yes, you're all correct. Yes, he is struck with polio. And what does this woman do? She drops everything that she had begun to get back involved in, and she takes care of her husband. She takes care of him. She is the one who is in charge of his treatment, of his daily care, and she's devoted to getting him well again. And in fact, he does feel, as he's feeling stronger and stronger, he is debating on whether or not he should continue on in his political career. And what is Sarah telling her son? Get out. You're from a wealthy family. You don't have to do this. You can just live the rest of your life in leisure and not worry about a thing. What's Eleanor telling him?
She's telling him the opposite.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. You can do it. Make a difference. Be the change that you believe in. And she campaigns for him.
Yeah.
She campaigns for him. She is totally 100% there for him, supporting him. And then that results in what?
Gets to be governor.
Yes, 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 yes. So he's successful. He's successful. We all know this. This is history that we're all familiar with. But yeah, the mother is really losing her grip. Yeah, she's starting to lose her grip. But it's really, you can see the blossoming of Eleanor when she is out doing these things that are advancing women or helping out people less fortunate. What's happening to her?
She blooms.
She's getting stronger and stronger and stronger as she does that. And so now she's able to look somebody in the face, and before she probably wouldn't have, she would have cowered. Is she going to cower now?
No.
No. You can see the evolution of Eleanor Roosevelt. And so she's out there. She joins the Women's Trade Union League, and they do some very significant things. Here's what they have accomplished. All right, they want to establish humane labor standards. You know what it was like in the industrial age, right? Yes, fair minimum wage, a work week not to exceed 48 hours, and what are we going to do with child labor?
End it.
Yes, that was horrendous. All right, the other thing that she did during this time was she opened a school for girls. This is a finishing school. It's in Hyde Park, and she opens it with two other women suffragettes. And the young ladies at this school, what do you think they're learning?
Well, they go into politics and social consciousness and all of that.
Yes, they're learning to be socially aware. They're learning to be socially aware. In fact, they had such a lot of work to get done that Franklin built a house. This is Valkill Cottage. So this was some property that they owned. And he built this for her so that she could have meetings there, so that she could get her work done there in privacy. And actually, she moves into it. This was supposed to be for to concentrate on work, and she just loved it so much. This is how much high society meant to her. She preferred the cottage. All right? Now, what else does she do while she's there? Because, of course, we're in the Depression now, right? So she's very active during the Depression. And what she does is she opens up a shop in that area, and she employs people. They build furniture, and they build home decor, decorative things. So she employs people in that area. And then she gets to have even greater exposure, because what happens to Franklin?
He runs for president.
he becomes president. And as he goes into office, she's going right with him. Do you know that she is his greatest advisor?
Yes.
She's his greatest advisor. He relies heavily on her. And as first ladies go, you know, to date, the traditions, does she conform? Does she give up all of her activities?
No, she does not.
She completely changed the role of First Lady in the United States. Yeah, she completely changes that. What anything that was happening with the women before, once they become First Lady, they drop it and they're just gonna, support their husband and whatever he is doing. Do you know she gave over 350 press conferences for her husband? Because was he able to travel a lot?
No.
Was he able to stand up at the podium?
She
With a lot of help. Yes, it was greatly difficult for him to do that. But when she's out there doing it for him, over 350 press conferences, the advisors, the men, are telling her to just keep it superficial. Don't talk about anything too, in depth. Don't, don't go deep into his policies or anything. Just keep it, on the surface. What do you think she thought of that?
Yeah, she told him this fine night.
She had a different game plan. All right, she had a totally different game plan. When she gave a press conference, she said whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
She said what she wanted. There were issues that were important and they had to be heard, and she got the word out. In fact, she got the word out so incredibly well. Do you know that you've all heard of fireside chats, right?
Yes.
All right, we're all familiar with that. Are you familiar with the fact that she wrote a daily newspaper column?
Yes, I knew that.
She wrote a daily newspaper column. She wrote it's called My Day. All right, and again, this was her advisors were saying to her, just, so you can be relatable to the general public. So just keep it on that level. Do you think she did?
No.
No, she didn't. She wrote a monthly column in a magazine. It's called If You Ask Me. And then what does she do? She delivers her opinion. All right, if you ask me. All right, and then she also, did you know that she had a radio show every Sunday night on NBC?
Yeah, I knew that too.
Every Sunday night on NBC. Well, see, you're a little bit older than me. I don't remember that. All right, so yes, and then she wrote many books. Did you know she published many books, and she gave many speeches. So was there any holding her back?
No.
Was there any controlling what she was going to say?
No.
No, there wasn't. She has come into her own. She has finally, fully come into her own. And I will have you know, she comes from a family of money, but every book, every speech, every radio show, every penny she got for her publications, where did all of that go?
Charity.
Yes, it all went to charity. Do you know that she founded a town during the Depression? It's called Arthurdale. Yeah, Arthurdale. It is in West Virginia. And when she went out, because she always was going out, she didn't just trust what people were telling her. She had to go see for herself. All right? So during the Depression, she's going into the hospitals. She's going into the mental hospitals. She's going into the poor parts of towns. She's going to see for herself. When she went to West Virginia during the Depression, she found families living in caves. They were living in caves. And so she establishes this through the Homestead Act, and it's called Arthurtown. And that was her pet project because she was so upset at the conditions that she saw for herself. She was also active in civil rights. She's been really disappointed that she didn't advance the civil rights as far along as she wanted to. But she was an advocate for civil rights, and I was going to play a clip here, but I think I have to not do that. So the Daughters of the American Revolution would not allow Marian Anderson. Do you know Marian Anderson is a black singer, right?
Yes.
Marian Anderson is a black singer, and she was going to sing in the Constitutional Hall, but they said no. The Daughters of the American Revolution said no. She couldn't do that. All right, well, Eleanor Roosevelt was a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution until this happened. She immediately dropped her membership, and she arranged for Marian Anderson to sing. I'm going to play it. Let's just play it, because it's wonderful. Let's just do this.
Genius draws no color line. And so it is fitting that Marian Anderson should raise her voice in tribute to the noble Lincoln, whom mankind will ever honor. Miss Marian Anderson.
Look at the crowd. So that was something that Eleanor Roosevelt encouraged and had a hand in arranging that for her, making quite a statement. During World War II, she went into the different war areas, into the hospitals, and when she went into a hospital, she spoke to every patient in there. Every single one. She didn't leave until she spoke to every single person. Okay, April 12th, 1945.
Roosevelt died.
Yes, exactly, Edith. Yes, Franklin, her husband Franklin, passes away. And so Eleanor is feeling like, well, that's going to wrap it up for me.
No, they did it.
All right, that's it. I've done all the things that I am going to do in my life. So was that true?
No.
Oh my goodness, she was just getting started. All right, so her husband passes away, and we have who? And Harry Truman says to her, I think you would be perfect for...
United Nations.
Yes, exactly. To be the ambassador for the United Nations. She is the chairperson. She becomes the chairperson for the the Declaration of Human Rights. She's working on that now. Then when John Kennedy comes to the presidency, he reinstates her in the UN, so they work very closely together, and he also puts her on another commission. Did you know that there was a commission on the status of women?
Yeah.
Did you know? Did you know that? Yeah, I was not aware of that. All right, so she's on the Commission on the Status of Women, and that was to make sure that women have greater advancement in the country. Now, Effie, if you tell me you knew this one, I will be so impressed.
I read all about her.
All right, well, did you know, this kind of blew my mind. So you remember the Bay of Pigs, right?
Yes.
So the Bay of Pigs, everybody knows that. But did you know that Eleanor Roosevelt was among the committee that negotiated the return for American prisoners in Cuba?
That I didn't know.
I was blown away. She was on, I had to check that. You know how I checked things 3 times?
Yeah.
I checked that 6 times. She was on the committee.
How old was she by then?
Well, I know. She's quite, she had to have been like in her 70s. She had to be 62. So she, no, she was 78 when she died. So she's in her 70s. And so she is on the committee that negotiates for prisoners. And then, of course, she's also helping John Kennedy with another project. Can you think of it?
Peace Corps.
Excellent. Oh, you're all so smart. You're all so smart. Yep. And then, as we were saying, so she dies. She's 78 years old when she dies. She works her whole life. She never stops. She never retires. She is an absolutely remarkable woman, a world-renowned humanitarian, and here is how she wanted her funeral.
The little parish church of St. James, for the second time, centers the grief of a world on Hyde Park, New York. To Mrs. Franklin Roosevelt's funeral come President and Mrs. Kennedy to pay homage to the greatest of all First Ladies. A cathedral would not have held a portion of those who would mourn her. But like her husband, Eleanor Roosevelt wished to be buried from the family place of worship. Former President and Mrs. Truman arrived from Independence, Missouri. Former President Eisenhower also attends. Adlai Stevenson was the only friend outside the family to see Mrs. Roosevelt in her last illness. Vice President Lyndon Johnson and Mrs. Johnson. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Earl Warren. Averill Harriman was an old friend of White House days. Besides the great figures, people from the humbler walks of life also come to the final rites for a beloved friend. To the quiet grave in the cypress-walled rose garden, the cortege bears the oak coffin, covered with pine boughs from Mrs. Roosevelt's Valkill cottage. Though the morning rains have passed, the skies are somber, in contrast to the brilliant spring day when President Roosevelt was laid to rest here. The 4 Roosevelt sons follow their mother's bier. Three presidents stand with heads bowed in deference to the passing of the great lady, whose favorite hymn spoken at these services began, "O Lord, make me an instrument of your peace."
There were so many quotes that I could have ended with, but I chose this one. And the reason why I chose this one is because it's about courage. And as we understand the whole trauma that she had grown up with, but what did she do with it?
She turned it to her advantage.
She turned it to the advantage of everyone else, didn't she?
Yes.
She didn't let that hold her back. She didn't cave inward. All right? She didn't cave inward. She just kept giving and giving and giving and doing everything she could. And so she had an extraordinary life, and it's even more extraordinary because of all the things that she had to overcome. Now, I apologize because normally the way we do things here in HED Talks is you tell me what I'm going to do. I don't tell you what I'm going to do, right? Isn't that the way it works? But I had to get the newsletter out, and I had to decide on a series. I had to decide on something to do. I didn't have a chance to consult you all. So I did choose something, all right, and I'm prepared. I'm prepared. But if you don't like it, let me know, and you can tell me what else you would like me to do. But I think you might be a little curious. Next week, we're going to start a brand new series, and that series is called Espionage. All right, do you think that would that be interesting?
Yes, it would.
And I am going to start with, oh my gosh, who guessed?
The Secret Service.
Mata Hari.
Mata
Yes. Well, you know, we were on women, so it was just like a natural jump for me to do that. All right, so, yeah, so we're going to start our new series. It's called Espionage, and we will start that next week. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you then.